Well, hello, my name is Sean Smith. Welcome to another session here for LPOnline. Welcome back for those that have been with us. Welcome for those that are seeing this. This is part of a sequence of assessments, topics on assessments. And of course, if you're just popping in, great. This is awesome. Welcome. If you're coming back, I hope the previous one was helpful, and I hope the next ones are helpful as well. Now, for this series on LPOnline, we're going to focus in on elements of progress monitoring under that broad area of assessment. And many of us, when we think of progress monitoring, we think of those IB goals and benchmarks. Now, I also want us to be thinking about the fact that we want to collect data to further understand our success and inclusion. And so data drives that inclusion drives it with data. Similarly to the evidence-based practices, many of the practices we use, we want to make sure they're effective. We want to make sure they're efficient. We want to make sure that they work, of course. And in using the right practices and collecting data to determine their success, further enhances the inclusion of all learners, particularly those with intellectual disabilities, and of course, for today, individuals with Down syndrome. Now, the list of things goes on with assessment and progress monitoring, but the goals of this session are focusing on a couple different things. One is I want to kind of reinforce some elements with progress monitoring, and we'll just call those tips. We want to kind of reinforce some digital solutions when it comes to that. And finally, some brief examples of an application. And again, this is in addition to a number of things we're talking about assessment. So this is just one portion of a series of issues. And so take it as it is, and let's get started. Now, if you've been with me previously, or if you're going to continue watching this series, this is something we're going to continue to reinforce. Now, in this session, I'm not going to go to the tool, but this tool, it's one of our resources that's hyperlinked. It's off of the site, National Center on Intensive Interventions. And in so doing, they offer a tool both in the area of academic, but also behavior in terms of progress monitoring. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this website, please go to it. It's organized to feature the various tools that can assist us in progress monitoring. As you can see from this screenshot, a number of them are automatic. They're fairly brief in terms of time, automatic in terms of not only completion, but automatic in terms of scoring, which is great help for us educators of limited time. And of course, it gives us our data in a variety of different ways for us to communicate with our peers, but also with family members and parents at home, and of course, our students. So there's one in terms of the area of academic, and of course, there's also behavior progress monitoring tools that are increasingly being developed and available, and this tool also features those. So if you're trying to find some of these tools, this is a web-based tool to use. Now, in this time of pandemic, post-pandemic, wherever we are, this time of hybrid, the time of face-to-face, the time potentially we're still somewhat remote, depending upon where we are, progress monitoring data, assessment, electronic, digital, all combined, to me, first within our content management systems. Many of us have been using the IXLs of the world, or Khan Academy, or other systems that offer the content, but also within the content, they offer us data to be collected and assessed, often automatically. It's right there, part of the lesson. And of course, they offer dashboards for us to access to better understand information. And we're going to talk about that here as part of our focus. But many of us either have our content management systems, and yes, oftentimes there's a pay for that, or our schools are using some sort of learning management system. Seesaw, PowerSchool, Google Classroom, of course, is widely available. And what I want to emphasize here is many of these learning management systems, like Google Classroom, offer formative assessment tools like Google Forms that allow us to create our own assessments, administer them where they're automatically graded, and then more importantly for me is they're automatically graded for us to then see in a dashboard system for us to be able to see, let's say, trends in terms of where they are, actual plotting the points and then seeing the trend. Or maybe we want to see it in a variety of different ways in terms of graphics, be it a pie or a bar chart or wherever it may be. So these are readily available to us. And the beauty of being readily available to us is that, one, the automaticity of administering the assessment, the progress monitoring assessment. Two, the automaticity of having access to the data to then do a data walk with students, which I'll get to, or for us to share with peers to use ourselves, and the list of things goes on. So to me, this is very, very much should be high on our list, very much allowing us to do progress monitoring at a level that potentially we haven't been able to do in the past. And it's so critical, as we've shared in an earlier series here, for us understanding truly where our learners are and what we need to do in terms of adjusting our instruction, continuing our instruction, intensifying our instruction, whatever it may be. And of course, I use instruction globally. It could be our behavioral interventions, our social emotional interventions, etc. But today's example, I'm going to focus in on the area of writing. Now, not so much in terms of writing and progress monitoring. That's a whole nother session. What I want to do is I want to use a writing progress monitoring tool, which is actually off of a website. Let me go to this website real quick. And this is a website called Project Write. And Project Write is free to use. And so I'm emphasizing something free to use, but the reason I'm emphasizing it for today's presentation is I want to emphasize something that we can use and then, of course, automatically scores. It features many of the things that we want to emphasize with digital progress monitoring. So with that in mind, Project Write progress monitoring is an automatic tool where educators can assign their students, they can assign their classes, they automatically are provided a date and time that they do this. They're provided a writing prompt. Automatically, it's from across genres, narrative, persuasive, argumentative. And so basically, you can organize it for a student or a group of students or for the class. You can organize it for the day of the week, and it could be reoccurring every 2 weeks, and that's generally how we do it. But also, then you can select the narrative, the persuasive, argumentative. The student gets on. They're actually the prompt is read to them as these screenshots are showing. The student then has a chance to listen to the prompt, listen to directions, and then of course type out what they want. Now this is a 3-minute write. Again, there's another session that walks you through all the ins and outs of this. What I wanted to emphasize is the fact that once they complete it, this is what we should be looking for in progress monitoring tools that are available to us. So, for example, we should be able to find tools that allow us to do data walks with our students. And when I think of data walks with our students, I tend to think of the framework of universal design for learning. For those unfamiliar with that, that's a whole nother session as well. But what I want to emphasize with universal design for learning and data walks is the fact that we want to make sure that the data is represented in a variety of different ways. So the learner, depending upon who they are, can better visualize what it is we're trying to share with them. See, because if we make these connections, we can further engage our learners and engage them in understanding where they're at, engage them in what we're trying to have them do, and engage them in the actual assessment process, which is really critical if we want to further support our learners. So with that in mind, we don't want data sets that provide us formulas. And this is an old formula that school psychologists would use to determine if a student had a learning disability. My dad was a school psychologist, God rest his soul. He would say, hey, well, we can determine from formulas what the data says. We don't want to do that. And we also don't want to rely on the old, in terms of where they are, in terms of normative curves. That, yeah, this is data. Yeah, this is sharing information. But no, we want it a little bit more practical. We want it in a variety of different visuals. And we want to find tools, progress monitoring tools, that provide us the option of a variety of visuals. It might be the fact that some learners, the trend line is going to be perfect. Or some of the individuals we're working with peer-wise, colleague-wise, they want to be able to see it in that manner. Or maybe they want to see it as a graphic, or maybe they want to see it with different color. So the progress monitoring tools that we select, we need to think of the data behind it, the dashboards behind it. And as I mentioned, content management systems and learning management systems have a variety of things. So back to my example with the Write progress monitoring tool. In this instance, they show a trend line. And so each progress monitoring point should be able to, when you select your progress monitoring tool, it should offer where this is across time. So as you can see, there's a trend line for this individual. You can see how they've scored and where they're scoring across time. And in this instance, it's every 2 weeks. But you also want to be able to see the data itself, meaning the sample. So I want to see what the child actually wrote. And so in this instance, I can see this as well. So again, tools that you're looking for, you want to see the actual assessment. Yeah, I want to see what they did, but where did they go wrong? And in this instance, there's 4 scoring components. And again, this is another presentation, but words, letters, sequences correctly spelled are all basically part of the data points for this example. Increasingly, you also want to find progress monitoring systems that connect the dots. And what I mean by this is this system also allows in the dashboard, IXL does this as well as an example, other progress monitoring tools do this, and that is I've noted what the child is struggling with, but what is my solution? What's my suggestion? And as you can see on the recommendations column, there's a whole host of things that are being listed here. In this instance, it's production and keyboarding, but it could be organization, it could be drafting, it could be editing, and of course, in this instance, it links to solutions, to strategies, to examples the educator can then use to then support the child. So the dashboard here, not so much student data walks, but rather, oh, now I see where Kale's having a challenge. I see what Kale needs. There it is. Let me go learn more about it. In addition, we want to be able to compare norms. And David is a colleague of mine, David Bateman, and David is an expert in the area of law. And so he talks about the fact that when we're thinking about special education and IEPs and benchmarks and progress monitoring and all that, we need to think about a variety of components with norms, communicating with parents, sharing with data teams, et cetera, when it comes to the IEP. So here it is, I share my trend line, but in addition to sharing my trend line, I can also share the sample of what they actually did. So again, when I'm sharing with the team for progress monitoring, for planning with my IEP, I want to share not only the data, but I should be able to share the sample. That's really critical. So find those automatic scoring processes that do that, and a number of tools are out there doing that. Just besides Write, okay? In addition, I'm probably going to want to be able to share with my colleagues and with my IEP team the idea of where they are in terms of a norming. Now, in this instance, it is nationally normed, but it could be the fact that over time, I'm norming across a class. So it could be a typically developing class of however many students, and I want to find out where the students are falling and where the student particularly is falling. And so they may be falling the lowest 25th percentile. Here we have 9 students to concentrate on. So just not our student that we're thinking about, but a variety of different learners. And that helps kind of contextualize where students are struggling, what students to work with, because of course the green students, no, they're doing fine. It's the orange and red ones that we really need to focus in on. And of course, we're thinking about where our one student fits, and we might find they're one of the 8. Of course, then we're going to work with a number of different learners. So we want that information organized as well. But we also want data to show us progress across time. So this could be the individual, this could be a group of individuals. In this instance, it's about 200 students, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to be able to have data that's manipulative, that we can see in a variety of different ways for a variety of different applications. So when we think about those types of things, there's a host of things that come into play. We want to talk about rubrics later in a different presentation, but we do want to think about in terms of mapping out the monitoring of progress. We want to think about the students as we've talked about. We want to think about the team members, the parents, the professionals. We want to think about the quantity, the quality, expectations, a host of other things as we kind of go forward in terms of measuring progress. And of course, when we collect data, we want to think about a variety of different ways. And in another session we'll be getting to is we'll reinforce the fact that we can collect this data through other digital tools. So video of what the students are doing, audio of what the students are doing, video as examples of what the students are doing that we can then code. And again, that's for a whole nother session later on. So please come back. Please come back when we talk more about assessment globally. We talk more about progress monitoring specifically to writing, by the way, where we really tease this out. We talk about the use of formative assessments and a host of other things. But for today, what we hope we've done is we've reinforced the fact that with progress monitoring and digital tools, when it comes to understanding data and it comes to what we should be looking for in our dashboard system, there's a number of different components that are really critical. Now, we offer some resources to go along with this. We offer a brief narrative to kind of reinforce these important points as part of this module. And again, please realize this is part of a sequence of modules on not only progress monitoring, but assessment in general for individuals with intellectual disabilities, particularly Down syndrome, for their success in our inclusionary classroom, their success with evidence-based practices, and their overall success as we try to determine the goals and benchmarks for a child's IEP. Again, my name is Sean Smith. Thank you for being part of this with me on LPOnline, and have a great day.